If you wish that life came with an instruction book, Pete Hardesty has a book for you called Adulting 101, perfect for you and the young adult in your life. That's coming up on episode 134 of Manly with Andy.
Emotions are great friends, but terrible masters. And so part of being emotionally intelligent is knowing you don't necessarily, you want feelings. Feelings are great friends, but terrible masters. You want it to be the caboose, not the engine driving everything you're doing.
Welcome to the 30-Second Book Club podcast, a place for people who want to read more books and be in a book club, but don't really have time to do either. I take care of that for you. My name's Andy. And in the podcast this week, it's one of the authors of Adult 101, guidance for 20-somethings on becoming healthy, successful grown-ups, but really it's good for any adult. I learned a whole lot from this, and I'm sure you will too. Now, Pete, this is book 2 of the Adulting 101 series. What, you didn't cover everything in the first one?
Yeah, what were you thinking? Book 1 should be full enough. We didn't need any more, right? Right. Well, book 1 was more about the hard skills of trying to grow up and become an adult, of professionalism, interviewing, how to treat your boss, how to treat your coworkers, finances, relationships, time management, those type of things. But we realized that even before we started writing this, before the pandemic, and we realized that adulting on the inside is a little different than getting everything and together on the outside. And so, this one is much more about the inner life. It's much more about self-awareness, emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, how to have a healthy relationship with social media. And then the whole last second half of the book is about mental health. And so anxiety, depression, loneliness, 2 chapters on each one of those. And neither Josh or I are mental health professionals, but we recruited a team of 5 licensed counselors, 1 psychotherapist, to kind of speak into that second half of the book. And I'll tell you, it really helped me. I mean, I feel like I should be an expert on counseling because I've been in counseling long enough, but we want to keep reminding everybody that, but they were so instrumental in kind of helping us maybe give some thoughts on how do we kind of get healthy on the inside.
So there's a lot. Again, we're just going to touch a little bit on this stuff. If you want to, you'll be highlighting a whole bunch of lines in this book. It's called Adulting 101, Book 2. So let's start here. First chapter, talking about knowing yourself and developing self-awareness. This just seems like something. Aren't we all self-aware, Pete? How do we become more self-aware? What's the importance of it?
Yeah, Andy, the self-awareness, I read this one study that said self-awareness was the most important trait. They did a 30-year study on thousands of people to be happy and to make more money. So if you want to be happy and you want to make more cash, get more self-aware. But really, it really is the most important trait to develop in your 20s because it's one of those top buttons that every other button kind of aligns with it in your work, your relationships, your family, and on. And if you had top buttons off, we've all had those shirts you put on a collar shirt or a blouse. And you get to the end, you have a button left. You're like, wait a second. And then the collar's up on your, up on your shin. There's good news and bad news about self-awareness. I think the good news is it's a skill and a trait. The bad news is it's a skill and a trait or a gift. So some people are just naturally self-aware. We all have those one friend that just kind of knows how everybody's feeling and is really in touch with who they are and how they come across. And then we all have that other friend that is just a bull in a china shop that just breaks into the room, kicks down the door, doesn't leave this like wake of, shattered lives behind them. Maybe not shattered lives, but self-awareness is so important. I think of, Andy, this story. I was leading a team at James Madison University, and we had just started this thing called Young Life College at the university. And so we had worked so hard for like a month. I mean, we had done 10 events, 10 days in a row for this welcome week. And then we took 100 kids away on a retreat. And I had this little tiny team of 5 college students and professor. And I brought sparkling cider, because not all of them were 21, to our team meeting 4 or 5 weeks into and those little flute champagne glasses to celebrate. I'm thinking, you guys, we have won the Super Bowl already. And all these people were looking at me just angry, worn out, tired, exhausted. I had pushed them beyond the brink. And I tried to sneak that stuff back in my bag, but I showed a very unself-aware moment. I had a blind spot. I had a blind spot to kind of seeing how my team was doing. Again, good and bad news. Blind spots, everybody has them. The good news. The bad news, everybody has them. And so I think part of what you can do to really build self-awareness, and we do, I think we have a list of 10 or 12 things, but I'll highlight 2 or 3, is one, to start to reflect, to journal. And I know a lot of people journal or don't journal and kind of think, I don't really need that. But high capacity leaders, one of the things that have been shown that they have, in common is that they journal and reflect on the day before. Another thing to do to increase self-awareness is to start to really ask people how you come across. It's weird to ask people, that you work with or that you have to trust them. But hey, how am I coming across here? Or I know there's one of my friends, she's a CEO. She asks people all the time, hey, how are you experiencing me? I think that's, it's just learning. And I kind of put this into, we would evaluate our volunteer leaders in Young Life each semester, but instead of me evaluating them, which I still did, I also gave them some space to evaluate me. And I said, what am I missing? What am I not getting? Where are my blind spots? And this helps. I don't, my advice is just to write them down and figure out the amount of truth in them later, because my core reaction is just to be so defensive. Well, wait a second. That's not true. How could that, And then I'd say the last thing is really to kind of develop your inner circle, your board of directors, some people that really can, it's hard to be self-aware if you don't have some people that really know you at a deep level. And also I think all the personality tests and assessments, they're really helpful. We don't want to put too much value in those, but I think you should take a bunch of those and like Strength Finders or Enneagram or Myers-Briggs. I think they're all helpful in kind of getting to know yourself and being able to really know your own emotions and know others as well.
And so you touched on it a little bit there, but so once you kind of know yourself, then to know others, you talk about emotional intelligence, which is this word that, I don't know, I know it's been around a while, Pete, but I don't know if I've just been noticing it everywhere the last year or so. And what does that take to have that emotional intelligence to then know others?
Yeah. Emotional intelligence, EQ, some say, IQ, intelligence quotient, emotional. There's also CQ, like cultural intelligence kind of, but it is the, ability to recognize your own emotions and also recognize the emotions in others. So it's deeply rooted, it's deeply related to self-awareness for sure. They're a little different, but emotional intelligence is something that also is something in work, home, relationships, family. It's going to be one of the most important things, because people that are highly emotionally intelligent succeed. That's just the truth. They know how they're coming across. They know how people are feeling, and blind spots can often disguise. But if you have a blind spot, it can really impair you. That can be in all facets of life. And so, if you're working in an office, my bet is that for every single person in the office, there's at least one thing that almost everybody knows about them that they don't actually know about themselves. And that's the kind of self-discovery journey that we're all on, to figure out what are those blind spots, and then can we work on them? And that's the best thing. Emotional intelligence, again, there are people that are gifted emotionally intelligent, just like there are people that are gifted with IQ. There's people that are gifted with EQ, but it's also a skill that we can really build, and you can really get your emotional intelligence to be a robust asset in your life. And so that, wherever you all fall on that spectrum, I think that, there's still some things too. One of the things is to kind of identify patterns in your behavior. If you feel like, if you're ever saying, well, here we go again, that's maybe something to pay attention to. If you're having disproportionate reactions, I remember a couple of years ago, I was sitting in line at a Chick-fil-A and the line wasn't really crafted right. Somebody came in a side door and kind of got in line in front of me. And I was like seething. I'm like, what's wrong with me? It could have mattered less. But something else is going on. We almost start to identify some of those signposts, and they might be pointing at something else that you want to look at. One of my favorite quotes is emotions are great friends, but terrible masters. And so part of being emotionally intelligent is knowing you want feelings are great friends, but terrible masters. You want it to be the caboose, not the engine driving everything you're doing.
Let's go here. Part of adulting, and I'm still working on this as a middle-aged adult, is I like you have a chapter about leading others, but in my position, I'm not in a position of management at my work. So I think sometimes for people like me, it's easy to say, oh, I don't need to lead others. But Talk a little bit about how you can lead others no matter, what. It really, it doesn't depend on your position, right? It's something you can do wherever you are, whatever you're doing.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Andy, because a lot of our 20-something friends are entering into the workforce, and you don't usually go in managing people. You don't usually go into this big position of leadership. You go in at the bottom, and they just graduated college, or maybe they graduated high school and they're going to work. And, that's, I read this stat the other day, 72% of Gen Z believes they should be promoted within the very first year working in the marketplace. And it's like, that's setting up your expectations for severe disappointment right from the start. Like, you probably won't be. You're probably not going to be promoted right away. And so, but this is the very, very, very important. A lot of what you will be doing is you will be crafting, you're leading. Even if you're not by title or direct line authority, everyone is leading. And the way we do that is people see you. And I think you can still lead, even if you're the last person or the bottom of the food chain in your office or your work, whatever job you have. I think hard work shows a leadership trait that, and then also looking out for others. We can lead by serving others. It's crazy in our workplace, not caring who gets credit for something. And I know this is a little bit counterintuitive, but if you'll serve and actually help others succeed, in the long run, you will actually succeed in work. And it's counterintuitive because we're taught from an early age, look out for yourself, climb that ladder. If you need to step on somebody's head to get up that ladder, keep doing it. And that's just not true. It's not true in reality. And so, and we know that. We know that servant leadership has kind of been kind of trendy the last 30 years, but Jesus was doing servant leadership a long time ago. And he kind of basically invented it, that if you want to be great, put yourself at the bottom. If you want to be first, put yourself last. If you want to live, come and die. And so I think that's, if you'll embed that, if you're 20 something and you'll embed that in your leadership core, you will have success in work. It might not be immediate. It might not be after the first year, but you will have success in your work.
Talking with Pete Hardesty, the book is called Adulting 101, Book 2. And something even from, as you were talking before, I talked to you a few years ago about book 1. Boy, the change in how much we're on our screens has just, especially with the pandemic and everything like that. So I love that you have a whole chapter about healthy screen time. So how do we have healthy screen time? What does that look like?
Andy, I wish I knew, honestly. I don't know. I still wrestle and struggle with this. I'm on my phone too much. I'm on either the iPad or computer too much. But I think, this is funny. We have 2 or 3 chapters around kind of screen time, social media. How do we figure this out? So after the first book, one of my friends set up a book signing for me. I didn't ask her to, but at a Barnes & Noble. And I'd never done it. I thought, oh, this is fun. So I'm going to the Barnes & Noble in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I get there at 1:30, got stacks and stacks of books. It's like 50 books and a big banner that says, welcome author Pete Hardesty. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. So we get it all set. Book signing starts at 2. 2:15 comes, a couple people come in, but nobody's coming to the table. 2:30 comes, 2:45, 3 p.m. comes, an hour I've been sitting at this table. Guess how many books I had signed? 0, not one. Not one sold, not one signed. I'm like, I called the manager over and I was like, hey, I think her name is Jenny. Jenny, have you ever had a book signing where you sold 0 books? She said, yeah, we had one of those. I said, you're about to have another. I'm not going out like that. I texted some friend and said, you got to get over here, just erase my number out of your phone. And so they got over, we ended up selling some that second hour because there was like some people around the table, kind of fun thing. I post that and I said, hey, no books sold first hour. My most liked post of any social media I've ever done, because I think it kind of scratched an itch of everything we watch on screens is not usually real life, And so I don't know whether you want to talk about social media in a minute, but we can talk more about that. But screen time, and we go into detail in our chapter about this, and we really tried to have some research about it. It is making us dumber as people. It's altering the physiology and the biology of our brains. It's making us not as deep thinker. To surf the internet, to cruise and get information like that. It's doing these things to us. But we keep coming back for more. It's engineered. A lot of the sites we're on, a lot of social media platforms, they are engineered to be addictive. They want us to kind of go, to scroll more, the infinite scroll, to look at more, to see more, to discover more, and just mindlessly scroll. And we talk about this in the book as well. A lot of the CEOs and senior leadership of these social media sites do not allow their children to even have an account or be on it. They know it's not productive. It's not beneficial. So we talk about how to control this beast, how to control our screen time a little bit. And I think we have a top 10 or top 15 of that, but I'll give you 2 or 3. One is to schedule your time. Schedule your actual screen time during the day, because most of us don't think intentionally about it at all. I know I don't. I'm trying to now, but I haven't figured this out, Andy. I got a long way to go. I've come a long way, but I have a long way to go. And so I just kind of, whenever I have a down moment, I'm usually just going on my phone, scrolling on Instagram or something. That's my favorite one. But if you schedule your time, you decide how much time do I want to spend in front of a screen today? Now, I'm not talking about work. I know some of us have to do that, but our leisurely time, how much do you want to? And let's go towards that. The airplane mode button on our phones can be our best friend. When we put that on and turn it over and get it, I even have to move my phone out of arm's reach to get it away from screen. I'm not strong enough. That's embarrassing. I'm a grown man, Andy. And my willpower is such, if it is within reach. Now, if I just stand up and walk across the room, I might not, it's not as like that. I've done it to just go across, start scrolling again. And I think just 2 more. Turn off all notifications, all social media notifications. I have most of mine off. I have a couple friends who have done it, and they said it changed their life. And it's really helped me. Even I only have 1 or 2 left, but almost all notifications. And guess what? I don't miss anything super important. I still don't. Last thing is this just has been really helpful to me, not to look at my phone or a screen last thing at night or first thing in the morning. Most of us, at least me, roll over. Where's my phone? Let me get on that for a little bit. I might look at news, but really I'm going to look at email and I'm going to look at social media. And I have it. I have my phone in charging in another, I don't keep it in the bedroom. It's in another room. And I try to do 2 hours in the morning without looking. I'll look at it first just to make sure, nothing's wrong or nothing happened, no crisis. But sometimes that 2 minutes turns into 20. But then I try to go 2 hours without it. And so I can do what I want to do in the morning. So I can maybe have some time to have some spiritual edification, maybe read the Bible, pray, read outside or read another book, exercise. So I'm still working on it. I got a long way to go, but those are some things that have helped me.
I think this ties into what you talk about next in the book, being indistractable. So how do we become indistractable? I know screens are part of it, stepping away from that, but what else have you found that really helps you just focus in a world that can't seem to do that at all?
Yeah, there's a book. I'm going to mess up his last name, but I think it's Nir Eyal, called Indistractable. And that's like, that book was very helpful, very practical. It's kind of like it lays out, what you do, how you do it. Because I think we move from a position of time management to now it's focus or attention management. Because we've all put something in our calendar for 2 hours. Hey, we got the time allocated towards it. In that 2 hours, if we're scrolling on our phones or just like looking through Facebook or something, we've missed it. You can have 2 hours, you can manage your time well, but now really the greatest resource is like energy and attention management. And so, there's so many great tips in that book. And I think we have a whole chapter on it, on how to become indistractable. One of the things that you want to do is he would say, turn off all notifications on your phone and your computer, and to have blocks during the day that are reserved for the most important tasks. They call it the MIT. And he would say to attack the MIT first thing in the morning. If you only could get, do one thing per day, what is that thing? You attack, you give it all your energy. And then everything you get done after that is almost gravy on it. So he also, this was helpful to me to move. I used to have Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, boom, all the Twitter right on my home screen on my phone. He says, hey, move those over to the second or even third screen if you have an iPhone or Android, to swipe through to your apps, and then put them in a folder. Title that folder like amusement or time wasters. Or, Andy, if you just put that stuff in a folder, for some reason, the iPhone reads it, it'll say productivity. It's almost like a joke. Apple was like, hey, let's put this as productivity. It's so weird. If you try it, it'll automatically, and then put them even on the second or third of the folder on the second or third screen of your phone. So it's not just something where you just go to it. He said that's if you really want to be ruthless with it, you can actually take them off your phone altogether. And you have to go to your laptop or on your iPad to look at Instagram or Facebook or whatever your favorite social media platform. I haven't gone that far. I want to go that far. I'm going that direction. But I have put them, and it does help. But now in my sleep, I can be like, I can get to them because I've done that so many times. It's help just to put some extra steps in to be intentional around how are you indestructible and indistractable. And then one thought at work is he even has in the book kind of some designs for a sign you put up in your office, because you might work in a cubicle, if you have your own office, you can maybe close the door, but a lot of 20-somethings don't. That's a luxury, but now you might be working from home, but if you're working in a cubicle setting or a place that's hard to be private, he said, either go outside if you're allowed to, outside the office or to another office. Maybe you can go into a conference room, close the door, or he says, put up a sign that says, I'm indistractable for the next 30 minutes. Please, no interruptions except for crisis, or, his language is really good for it. So that's helpful, I think, because it's just about getting time where you can focus 100%. And so much, you close your email, you close your social media apps, and you focus on something. And it's rare that we do that. It's crazy. Those are a couple thoughts.
One more thing, again, so we've really talked about the first half. The second half is great too, with, talking about anxiety and depression, loneliness. That's all in the book, Adulting 101, book 2, very important. But with just a few more minutes left, I thought one thing I wanted you to share on is at the very end of the book, you talk about true peace. I think through all of this, it's so easy, Pete, just to look at, hey, if I do X, Y, and Z, and I think there's this idea with a book like Adulting, well, hey, this is how I'm going to have a great life. Well, these things are going to help you out, but really it comes down to we're all looking for that true peace. So if you want to share a little bit about that, I thought that'd be great.
That's great. You could sum up the second half of the book, Andy, just by saying it's okay not to be okay. Because most people aren't okay. In fact, all people aren't okay. We all have our problems. We all, and really it comes back to sin. We live in a broken world. And so sin has affected us all. We're kind of all have something wrong in our brain, something wrong in our heart. And sins that we've committed, sins that have been committed to us, done to us. I will say that we kind of we share testimonies from people who have wrestled with this. I share personally from my struggle with anxiety over a long haul. And anxiety affects over a third of young people right now. That's from NIH. Over a third in a very, very significant way. Like where you either professional help or counseling. And mental health was fragile before the pandemic. And now the anxiety, depression, loneliness were soaring before. Gen Z has been called the loneliest generation in history. And so, we don't really have a ton of mention of faith or God or Jesus. We think that all the truths that we share in the book are from that. But then the last chapter, we felt like to talk about adulting on the inside and not talk about where Josh and I come from and what we believe is the key to true eternal success, we've been missing the boat. And so one of the big things is that your identity is received, not achieved. And then that's the inner peace. And to really find that inner peace, you can follow Jesus and still really have big time struggles with anxiety, loneliness, depression, maybe some other mental health. It's not like we just, Jesus is not some magic pill you just take and all of a sudden we're running through fields and like lilies are growing up, but he does offer in a very real way security and a peace that passes all understanding. That's like nothing else on this earth. And part of that is learning that our identity as a son or daughter of the Most High King we receive it. It's been given to us, that it's not something we have to strive and to go for. And, I still know some people who follow Jesus and they still wrestle with anxiety. But I will say that there are tactics in the world and there are spiritual tactics around anxiety. And I think, that you can definitely, the great news is that almost everybody that really goes after, these tactics does find relief and does find help. But true peace will not be found unless you find it in this God who loves you more than we could ever imagine. That's kind of where it ends up. So the whole book is appropriate for anyone of any faith or no faith. But at just the very last chapter, I think we make a very low pressure kind of, hey, here's where we're coming from. And so that's where we end the book.
When pain is a weight choking our breath, when suffering is a gaping wound in our chests, when grief is a shapeless darkness against which we helplessly flail, what does it mean to walk with God? Eric Tonjes asks that question and then tries to answer it in an honest exploration of God in our grief. He walked through this journey, losing his wife to a journey with cancer. The book is called Either Way Will Be All Right, and that's in the 30-Second Book Club coming up in 2 weeks. God didn't put you on this earth to be safe, and Dan Matthews shares about the adventures he and his wife have gone on following Jesus on episode 135, coming up next week on Manly with Andy.